Okay, so this video is about oven forming, which is also sometimes called drape moulding. Okay, so this is another thermoforming plastic, and I'm going to be using this thermoplastic, which again is acrylic. Okay, you can use this process to make simple sort of forms that have a level of bending to them. Okay, now if we look over at the machine here, we've got a little panel here where we can set the temperature of the thing. We're going to leave it set on 180 at the moment. Here's the on-off switch. Now you'll notice I'm wearing a large pair of thick leather gauntlets. Okay, this is because this becomes very, very hot. Okay, this is effectively an oven, and you can actually do oven forming with a conventional oven, but I wouldn't advise it. Okay, so here's my handle. If I just push this down, it unlocks it and I can take it out. Now you'll get a real gust of hot air coming out of there. Okay, so you don't want to be standing quite close to that. You want to be standing quite a way back when you're placing the thing in. We're going to get my piece of acrylic and just lay it onto one of these grills like this, and then close the door. Now I'm going to be timing this in my head. Okay, I'm going to give it around about 30 seconds, and then we're going to check it to see how pliable, how flexible that plastic is before we move on. You can see the temperature here. It tells you a sort of a heading as to where the temperature is at any given point in real time. And obviously, as you notice, because I opened up the oven at that point, it did drop down in temperature. Okay, so it's good to keep an eye on that temperature gauge as well. Now we're going to have a little test of it now. So I'm going to open this up. Again, I'm standing well back to just see how flexible this is. And you can see it already, it's starting to become more flexible. It's going to need a little bit longer to soften entirely, so we're going to close that. Now, what we're going to do with this thermoforming process is we're just going to drape mould it over a simple object. So I'm just going to use this, and I'm going to do it over onto this metal surface for today. So we're just going to drape mould it over this, and it will take on the shape of the actual, in this case, a mallet, the option we're going to use. Okay, let's have another little look to see how flexible this is. As you can see, it's becoming very pliable now, but it's not quite at the stage. So it goes back in again. I'm making sure that it just sits nicely on that grill. Now it's very important that we do get the whole length of the plastic completely hot, because obviously if we take it out and there's areas that are not completely softened, that are not pliable, it's going to make it very difficult for us to form over the object. And obviously what we don't want to happen, because we have to have full control over this, is for it to cool quite quickly as we're actually forming, and therefore we'd have to obviously heat it up and repeat the process again, or in the worst case scenario, it could snap the plastic if it cools before we get it perfectly formed around the shape. Okay, we'll give it another few seconds and then we'll check again. Okay, there we go. So this is now very flexible. You can see it's almost like a piece of paper, and I have to work quite quickly now. So I'm going to lay it over my shape, and I'm going to just carefully push this down and hold it so it takes on the form. Okay, and as I say, there we go, I'm just holding this. Obviously I'm going to hold this a little bit open so you can see it on the video, but what I'd want to do is really get this completely tight to the shape so it takes on the form. Okay, now I'm not going to worry too much about getting this for perfect form for today's video. Okay, but you can see that's quite easily taken on that shape. Okay, it's still warm at the moment, but we're going to release that for the moment. What we would do in real life is we would leave this for maybe a minute, holding it in place like this, or we need to quench it, run it under a tap or something to cool it a lot quicker if we weren't able to hold it tightly. Now, as you can see where I've done this, it's not bad, it's a fairly accurate forming, okay, but we could get it a lot better than that. We could probably get it a lot tighter to the form and stuff like this. Now what we would need to do is obviously make a jig, in this case like a bending jig or a mould, that had two parts. Now what this mould here is a male form. It's a male form because it protrudes. It protrudes out like this and takes on the shape like this. Now if I was making a much better jig to give me more control, I would also have the corresponding female form to this. Now if we look at this jig that was produced by a year 13 student, you can see we have the male form here, so it would take on this curve, but we could place this female form over the top like this. Notice it has just enough space for a 3mm piece of acrylic to be placed in there, and these two parts could be kind of clamped together around the thing so that while that's cooling, it secures it in place and keeps it completely accurate.